Japan is planning to dump around 500 Olympic-sized swimming pools worth of nuclear waste into the Pacific Ocean. When you say it like that, sounds alarming. But let's break down how we got here, what the plan is, why some say it's safe, why some say it's not, and why there isn't really a better option. Let's go back to the 11th of March 2011, when a magnitude 9.1 earthquake struck off the coast of Japan. For 6 minutes, violent vibrations were felt across the entire country, turning towns into piles of rubble. And when the shaking finally stopped, all eyes turned towards the ocean as a tsunami washed over Japan's coastlines. Walls of water erased entire communities and caused even more destruction than the initial earthquake, and took away more than 18,000 lives. But over at the Fukushima Daiichi power plant, the worst nuclear disaster since Chernobyl was unfolding. The tsunami had flooded the facility, cutting off power to a critical cooling system, causing a triple reactor meltdown. Tens of thousands were evacuated, while emergency workers risked their lives trying to keep the crisis from spiraling out of control. The plant has been decommissioned, and in the years since the disaster, radiation levels off the shore of Fukushima have dropped, but on land, danger still lurks. According to estimates, 900 tons of melted nuclear fuel remain inside of the 3 damaged reactors, and radiation levels are still so high that most of the cleanup has to be done using robots. Estimates on how long it will take to clean up this mess vary. Some say up to 4 decades, others say even longer. And keep in mind that Japan is one of the most seismically active places in the world, meaning there's always the looming possibility that another one might trigger a potentially worse meltdown. So keeping this already very long process going is ideal. But progress on decommissioning is being held up by a more pressing problem. Over 1,000 tanks filled with contaminated water cover much of the plant and are literally standing in the way of cleanup efforts. And the plant's operators, TEPCO, says they're going to reach capacity later this year. Okay, great, so let's get rid of this. There's a problem. The options of what to do with this contaminated water are extremely limited. This is why the government is saying the only feasible solution is to dump it. Obviously, this has led to fierce opposition, but Japan and other scientists are arguing that the water will be treated and it's perfectly safe. Here's why. Before it's even stored in the tanks, the water is collected and put through something called the Advanced Liquid Processing System. This is basically like a giant Brita filter that removes most of the radioactive elements, including the ones that experts say are most harmful. But the one element it can't remove is tritium, which is a naturally occurring radioactive form of hydrogen. That's what's stored in these tanks, and that's what they want to release. Here's the logic behind it. The general consensus, since tritium occurs naturally in the environment, like in rain and seawater, low doses of it aren't harmful, especially since it doesn't accumulate or build up in our body over time. This is what led experts to suggest a safe way to deal with this problem is to literally water it down, which the Japanese government plans to do using seawater. It's kind of like when you make lemonade that's too sweet and you add water to cut the sweetness. After the water is collected, treated, and salt water mixed in, the goal is for the resulting liquid to have tritium levels around 7 times lower than what the World Health Organization recommends in drinking water. And they're not doing this all in one go. They plan to release this water in small spurts over the course of 20 to 30 years. So it's gonna take a long time. By the way, this isn't new because all nuclear power plants produce tritium. And releasing tritium into the ocean, streams, and rivers is already a common practice around the world. And Japan says that its wastewater will have less tritium annually than a normal nuclear facility. But even though it's at levels considered safe, it's still radioactive. Therefore, this hasn't been without controversy. Local fishermen who have struggled to rebuild their reputation after the nuclear disaster are afraid news of the release could make people scared to buy their fish again. And it's not only them, other countries have voiced opposition as well, including the Pacific Islands, who already have a legacy of being the world's dumping ground for nuclear waste, so I can't say I blame them. There are even a few scientists questioning whether the release would impact the marine environment, saying there isn't enough scientific data on the subject. But others say that worrying about the treated wastewater is ignoring the bigger elephant in the room, which is what will happen to the radioactive fuel debris in the reactor vessels once officials are able to reach it. So far, there hasn't been an official release date set, but the International Atomic Energy Agency, the Japanese government, and independent scientists maintained the planned release is reasonable and safe. And the IAEA also says it will provide independent monitoring to make sure levels meet all requirements before it's released.